with this world of AI, MSOs, like where does the hospital fit into this future?
The US government is kind of hyper aware, and that's something on the radar. So, in the near future, it's going to be possible for you to start $1 billion company with about 5 people. And that's pretty much, you nailed every business, right? There are regulations in place that would prevent, for example, a PE from growing beyond a certain size. I think there is like size or revenue requirements for you as a PE that once you hit that, that's it. You cannot grow past that. So typically you're going to have to go start another one.
So private equity firms invested 150 billion in healthcare last year, mostly buying clinics. But there was an MSO called Cardio One. They got $100 million from private equity without buying a single practice. Let me do that one more time.
Yeah.
This is the start. Private equity
Got it.
firms invested 150 billion in healthcare last year, mostly buying clinics. But an MSO called Cardio One got $100 million from private equity without buying a single practice. In fact, they explicitly never buy practices. Cardiologists keep complete ownership and tax IDs, while Cardio One only manages. So Cardio One is an MSO. So the question at the start of this episode is, what is an MSO? And if you were a cardiologist or a clinic operator, why would you want to be a part of one?
So an MSO is a management service organization. Think of it this way. To start a clinic, you have the property itself, kind of the real estate at which a clinic is there. You have the physicians, you have the staff. You need somebody to handle the phone. You need someone to handle the billing, the insurance, the scheduling, compliance, all of these things. And that's pretty much what a management services organization does. So the physician focuses on the clinical aspect of running the clinic. So he's talking to the patients, and the MSO will typically handle, ranging from a full service MSO will handle the scheduling, will handle the billing, will handle the compliance, filing the insurances, and therefore the doctor does what he does best, where he's servicing the clinical aspect. The MSO will deal with everything that has to do with running the business, advertising, bringing the new patients, and everything in between.
So if you
And
were a doctor, you were Dr. Shukri, would you want to manage your own clinic, or do you think you would rather be part of an MSO?
the benefit of an MSO is that they're doing this for, typically an MSO will do this for like 20, 30, 100 clinics, 300 clinics. So you get economies of scale. So you might get cheaper processing, cheaper staff, and essentially it's an economies of scale play. I would go with that, especially with the professional ones. They have standard operating procedures. They've standardized everything about running a clinic. If I'm starting one from scratch, all of these are processes that I have to figure out for myself. How to build different insurances, how to handle forms, and so that is something that is labor intensive, time intensive, and then it will take you a while and you'll make mistakes. As opposed to me trying to figure this out on my own. It's for the same reason you buy a franchise, more or less, or you kind of become part of a franchise, because they take care of a lot of the back end stuff for you and even the front end stuff for you, where you focus on doing what you do best. So I would probably go with MSO.
Got it. And how do MSOs acquire clinics into their portfolio? Like, how does it work?
An MSO does it well. I think that's the too nuance of a question, because an MSO will not really acquire a clinic in the sense of buying the clinics and the physical business, but a lot of MSOs will might essentially come to clinic and replace your existing team with the MSO team or with that service.
So it's almost like then you're removing your own staff and your staff via the MSO. And
Yes,
would it be contractual? Like, would I be locked in for a couple of years?
potentially, yes. So you usually look 2 to 3 years where you're working with them. The terms will differ depending on who you're talking to, what kind of medical service organization, and then even then there's no one size fits all. So there are specialized MSOs that will cater to a particular specialty in medicine, and there's ones that go after GPs, and there are ones that are broad that will cover everything to do, whether it's outpatient or even hospitals.
And private equity, like we said at the intro, they're actually now investing into MSOs almost more than they are clinics. Why would that be?
it's the multiples are definitely better. It's because an MSO, and we're actually heading to a world where MSOs are going to become more software than services and people. But typically, when you invest in a clinic, you have to you're carrying physicians, you're carrying their payroll, you're carrying buildings, right? Like real estate. And then the growth that will come out of that is limited to that clinic, right? So, if a clinic caters to a population of 60,000 people, as an example, the growth that you're going to see in revenue is going to be limited to those people. Versus if you have an MSO, your growth is basically acquiring more and more clinics or servicing more and more clinics. And therefore, you get much better distribution. So that's one aspect of it. And the second aspect of it is that over time, the more software enabled and AI enabled the MSO is, the less people intensive it is. And therefore, essentially your margin is going to be better on offering the service, especially that less people are involved.
Mm-hmm. And typically, how do MSOs get paid? Do you know, is it like a cut or is it?
Typically a cut on revenue, but they might have different scopes of service. I think it is scope specific, right? If I'm only doing the billing, it's usually a percentage of the billing. But if I'm handling also the front office and I'm handling the bookings, that would look completely different.
So I asked you what you would do if you were a doctor. Now, what would you do if you were an investor, if you own private equity? How would you go?
I would get equity into or buy pretty much kind of the most software-enabled MSO.
Or I guess you could also MSO. You could find an MSO that maybe wasn't AI-enabled, buy it, and then you could clean it up.
Yeah. Actually, that's a great way to go about it, because if I'm starting to kind of develop software for MSOs or them developing any software for medical industry, the place I would go to get the most data would be an MSO.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about MSOs currently? Do you think MSOs, we know what an MSO is now, to effectively operate clinics, make clinics more efficient. Do you think MSOs are doing their job well?
Well, I would say so, but I think there's more efficiency, just like everything else that is impacted by AI. There's way more efficiencies to be leveraged that I think people are just starting to leverage when it comes to, applying AI to all the jobs that people did or continue to do.
If you were in private equity, you bought an MSO that was maybe lagging behind, and you're Shimkrikaton, everything about AI. How would you start making changes at an MSO in order to get more ROI from AI?
I would start with I would look at what is the most manual or labor intensive workflows, and I would start to tackle those. The ones that are costing me a lot, that will be easy for the AI to tackle.
Can you give some examples?
Revenue cycle management is the one that comes to mind, right? RCM is somewhere where you might have a lot of people in place handling the different claims, handling rejected claims, authorizations, prior authorizations. So those are areas that are ripe for disruption with AI. So that's where I would probably start. And then phone, right? Every clinic has the same problems. It's, who's handling your phone right now? Who's handling all the patients' bookings? If you are doing this, the good old way, I would pretty much kind of try to modernize it, digitize everything there is to digitize.
So yeah, AI secretary on the phone, in the back end, revenue cycle management, insurance claims done by AI, and then also, probably some AI intake, maybe AI scribes, everything could be AI. And do we know that MSOs are investing in AI? I feel like they're not. I feel like they...
Well, some of them are. I think there's a lot of tech forward ones that are already investing heavily in AI. There's others who are, still behind the times, still running and doing things, with larger teams handling like revenue cycle management, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And we're actually talking to a couple of them that hey, you guys are sitting on a lot of data. You have a lot of people processing it. Let us help you with that.
And how would you go forward? What is the challenge with working with MSOs is what I'm asking. Obviously, it's a large it's an organization. if you wanted to sell something to an MSO, how would you do that?
The PE or a large clinic, right? They're usually much larger. They usually have kind of more stringent requirements on security, on compliance, which makes them an ideal customer for us.
We can leave that part in. Okay, then if you were a clinic owner and you had two options, one was to just sell to private equity, and the other one were to be potentially to work with an MSO, do you think it would be advantageous to work with the MSO? Like, do you think ROI that an MSO can give you is more than sort of with private equity?
Well, you're not. Well, it's different. I think Benji. I don't know if that's probably. I don't know if I would phrase the question like that, because what the MSO will do. I think if I'm a physician that runs a successful practice, the only question is, do I want to give up equity, and how much growth am I anticipating, and if I believe that I'm going to achieve, I think. It all depends on how much ownership I want to give away, right? Like if I work with an MSO, I don't have to give any ownership. I'm gonna, have to pay the MSO for its services, but then they might help me grow in certain ways. Versus a private equity, they'll probably, pay me a bunch of money and help me grow. I think it's a deal by deal basis. Like if I was, a physician and thinking about selling my clinic right now, I'd be shopping around. I would not talk to one. I would talk to 3 to 5. MSOs, I would talk to 3 to 5 private equity, shop around the best deal, right? I have to think about strategically where I want to be in 3 to 5 years. And that will probably guide me towards the right solution.
And where do you think MSOs are heading? Do you think more clinics will be part of MSOs in the future? Or do you think that it will be mixed?
I think MSOs and clinics, I think the boundaries will blur over time between the clinic and the MSO. Especially, again, if you think about it all becoming software, like there is no, if all the services provided by an MSO organization can be provided by an AI, then I would just buy that AI.
Well, it almost sounds like you think MSOs are going to become outdated. Like, you basically...
We're going to blur the line between software and entity. And I think that's going to happen in a lot of industries, not just in this industry. I think a lot of businesses that are people heavy, services business, especially if it's the type of services done in that business are more kind of like the white collar informational analysis, like pretty much all of those services business are going to become software. And therefore the lines will be blurred. And then there's a whole argument I was reading about this morning that the reason we had companies is because there's a transactional cost to doing business. And over time, what we're seeing is that transactional cost of doing business is dropping more and more and more, right? The reason I would want to go and hire a marketing agency is because I need help with, running ads. Maybe I don't have the know-how on how to run ads. But then if I have an AI software that run ads, do I really need to hire an agency? Do that company need to exist? And so I think the lines are being blurred. And I think what we'll see is more and more services just become software, become AI. I mean, that's what SaaS did, right? Like SaaS was like phase one, where essentially, I can have a lot of manual processes done by people, and then I bring a SaaS or a software as a service, and the software is doing the job. But typically, if you look at where we came from, the older generation, whenever you had a SaaS, you have people sitting behind the screen and entering some data, or reviewing some data, or analyzing some data and taking action. Now with AI agents, essentially, we're getting rid of both the user and the screen. And therefore, the data can come as an analog data from the outside world, have an AI process that, and then do the thing. So you don't need as many people to do the thing. And I think that's pretty much kind of the next generation, where anything and everything that can be done with AI will be done with AI. People will have to find something new to do.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like the MSO of the future is just a couple employees and then just a suite of AI agents.
100%. I mean, and that's pretty much, you nailed every business, right? Sam Altman spoke about this, where he said in the near future, it's going to be possible for you to start $1 billion company with about 5 people. I like that vision. And I think that's every day this becomes more and more possible, that you really don't need as many people to deliver certain types of work.
It's a personal question, but like, as Shukri Katan, like, where do you see yourself in this vision? Like, how far do you want to take this with your own vision?
As far as possible. Essentially, I've always been of the opinion that you disrupt yourself or the world will disrupt you, and I'd rather do it for myself. And so the way I think about it is that over time, I will automate myself out of a job, and that's part of it. But the other thing that is unique about what we do, because again, we still hire people, right? But my thesis is that even the people that I'm hiring, the value or why they want to work with us is because they will be on the forefront of that trend. They will actually get to see how we automate a company from the ground up, right? And then, hey, they might lose their job, but guess what? They're gonna learn all of those valuable skills to be able to start their own. And this is something I actually do talk to the team members about. In fact, some of the engineering team members reach out and said, hey, we would like to learn more about kind of this sales and marketing world. And I'm like, you know what? Absolutely. We will talk to you about that. We will train you on that, because I believe that the way I think about BitLab and Caesar Health shortly is that, you know how like the early PayPal mafia, right? There's a bunch of people who were in PayPal, killed it, and then went out there and each one of them started their own company. And the way I would like,
and that was like Elon was there, Peter Thiel as well.
Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn.
Reid Hoffman.
Again, it's a pretty big mafia, right? And I think the same is what I would like to do is, what will make me happy is once we get to that point where we're really automating ourselves out of jobs, everybody who was there has learned all the valuable skills to be able to go and make it on their own.
So then, this kind of MSO future ties into a much broader future, which everything is now.
Everything is AI, everything is software.
It's AI and automated, efficient, made more efficient. Instead, whatever you want to call it, but it's AI efficiency or revenue boosts, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So this is kind of another question. So we talked a lot about clinics, but what about hospitals? What's going to happen to the hospital system? I know that doctors themselves might not be a fan of the hospital system. This idea of like, you could be a part of a clinic, your own clinic with your own MSO. Like with this world of AI, MSOs, like where does the hospital fit into this future?
Well, it's the same future. It's essentially, if you think of course, there's way more complicated processes that go on in the hospital, but it's the same paradigm, right? Like in a hospital, you also have people who are servicing different departments, right? There is the medical archive where people are going to go and pull for you, your archive from 1999, let's say. And like even hospitals, they have kind of other organizations, what they call them GPOs, or purchasing organizations that go and procure medications, drugs, equipment for them. So they're part of the same ecosystem.
How does a GPO work?
Pretty much how an MSO works, right? Like, so a GPO will go out there and procure drugs in bulk, right? So a GPO might be working with multiple hospitals, and they're also similarly leveraging economies of scale, right? So a GPO that deals with, let's say, cancer centers, right? They might be going and procuring cancer drugs. They might be dealing with like supply chain optimization around, how do we get these drugs quickly? And so pretty much your hospital still needs phones, right? They're still servicing the same way, whether it's kind of a patient in person, they're handling phones, they're handling billing in the same way that a small clinic would handle billing, except, 10 times more complexity, more regulation. But essentially, it's the same paradigm. Like more and more software is going to take over, and over time, hospitals are going to become more AI and less people.
But ultimately, I mean, these hospitals are probably going to lag behind. They'll be the laggards in the market.
Not necessarily. I think there are ones who are already kind of in advanced stages. They're already investing heavily in AI. It depends, right? I think it's organization by organization. Some of them, again, there's some hospitals, rural hospitals that are struggling. They can't even pay their bills, right? So those will collapse over time, and then those who are more tech forward, tech enabled, running a solid foundation, solid business, they're just going to grow. And that's part of life.
And in the United States, like the hospital system, like who necessarily, like who runs these hospitals? Like who are like the decision makers for a hospital? There's no clinic manager or no MSO or...
Well, there are. Well, it's kind of similar. So in a hospital, typically you have like you have a chief medical officer, you have a CFO, chief financial officer, and then you have different departments. The decision making, well, it depends on what we're talking about, right? Like if I'm, going to deploy a clinical tool, the medical officer is a decision maker. The CFO might be the decision maker. If this is going into a particular department, there might be a department decision maker in the mix.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Mm-hmm. And I want to re-ask you then the question I asked you to start with the hospital. So you have now $1 billion. You have a huge loan. Are you going to buy a clinic group, an MSO, or a large hospital? Which direction would you go?
So hospital, clinic group. What was the third choice?
Or an MSO.
I would probably buy an MSO, or I would probably buy none of the above, because I think there's other trends that are playing out, and I think the money might be actually better spent chasing an even higher leverage opportunity. Mm-hmm. We're not going to share what that is. That's only for private subscribers that work with us. But I think it's the other trend that we're seeing, and maybe this is something we can share. The other trend that we're seeing is that over time, I think more and more medical services are going to move to the home. Like even for me, I would rather not go to the hospital. I would rather not go to my doctor's office. I would rather not go to a lab. And I would rather, have somebody come home and do a blood draw for me. So I think as more and more services come to the home, that's where I would probably invest, is like kind of home services, because I expect that to grow like crazy. And then I would be thinking about, given that direction, the right thing to own could potentially be an MSO, but it's also a tech company that facilitates pretty much all of the logistics around servicing patients at home. That'll be an exciting one to start and to scale.
Okay. Do you want to go through a rapid fire round of questions?
Let's go.
Okay. Would you rather buy practices or build a platform?
There is a merit to buying practices if they're profitable already. Like if I'm looking for cash flow positive faster, I would buy practice.
You think clinics, I mean, we don't have the data, but do you think clinics are undervalued in the United States? Like, you could buy a clinic right now and probably get a decent ROI. You clean it up, especially with AI.
No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot. There's usually a heavy lift, especially if you buy a clinic. It depends. It depends on the size of clinic, depending on the ownership of it. But if I walk into an average clinic, I'm willing to bet you that they have no documentation of anything about what goes on in the clinic. They're probably not as organized. They probably have different pieces of technology. That's the average clinic. I think there will be a lift required to get an average clinic to produce income. But I think if I go into, there are talented operators that are probably killing it, that probably streamlined their clinic, that probably created multiple revenue streams out of the same patients that they have today. Those are the people who are killing it, and those are the people who I would want to, be part of their journey.
So if you had an MSO, you had to beat a need, like ophthalmology, dermatology, orthopedics, like which niche would you go into?
That's tough, and that's changing. I think the reason it's tough is it's changing. Generally speaking, what I would look for is the highest margin service. And let me give an example, right? Let's say I want to, as part of an MSO, sometimes you go on and you procure drugs. I would look at, okay, what drugs I can procure and at what margin. Like essentially, if I leverage economies of scale and, my MSO is huge and I have, hundreds and thousands of clinics, then I would look at kind of where is that highest leverage. I would first want to see a breakdown of the MSOs, pretty much kind of profit margins across the services they offer and the lines they offer. And that will tell me where I would double down.
Are there any risk in the MSO model?
Of course, there's always risk in any business, right? If you are an MSO servicing, cancer drugs, for example, and now, with Trump changing the way the payments work and changing, how much you can charge, I think there's a lot of changes that will impact you as an MSO, whether it's depending on kind of how you service your clinics and what services you offer. I think like regulatory is usually the biggest risk. Right? Security compliance, that's usually also a big risk, especially if you're a big enough MSO. You are on FDA's radar, you might be on a whole bunch of federal institutions' radars for antitrust, for other behavior. So you're always kind of walking a fine line. There's always risk. The question is, which ones are likely to play out and how much of an impact they'll have on your business is what we'll be thinking about.
So do you know what an ASD is?
An ASC. Let me first of all visit
Ambulatory
ASC or MSC?
Surgical Center.
Oh yes. What about ASCs?
What's your thoughts on ASCs and all of this then? First of all, what is an ASC, and then what would be your thought on it?
An ambulatory surgery center is kind of in between a hospital and a clinic. Essentially, you go there, get a procedure done. Usually it's same-day procedures, simple procedures where, as opposed to you going to the hospital, checking in, staying, paying for a night, it's an in and out, right? Typically things like colonoscopies, endoscopies, cataract surgery, orthopedic procedures, those are usually done in an ASC. And this is an area that's growing, especially that recently I think there's been a whole bunch of procedures that got approved to be done by ASCs.
Is this a threat to the hospital system?
Essentially, this is revenue that is moving away from that was done previously in a hospital setting, now moves to an ASC. But I think hospitals are also investing in their own outpatient ASCs.
Got it.
And there's benefits to that even for a hospital because there are certain things that I don't need to necessarily tie a hospital bed to, right? If a patient is in and out same day, I would rather service them with an outpatient clinic or an ASC.
So the last question is then, you're like, and I want to say this as broadly as possible, like, who can you exit to? Who can you sell your MSO to? Who can you sell your clinic group to? Who can you sell your practice to? Like, who are the buyers when a doctor wants to exit or clinic operator?
I think it depends. So a clinic will usually exit to a private equity. An MSO can exit to a larger MSO that will consolidate. Hospitals will usually, if they are to sell, and there's a lot of them, I think about 40-45% are nonprofit, but the rest, they'll probably exit to another hospital group or private equity.
Do you think that consolidation healthcare is then, I mean, you've also kind of mentioned it earlier in this podcast, it's a very real possibility?
Yes, but keep in mind, the US government is kind of hyper aware, and that's something on the radar. So there are regulations in place that would prevent, for example, a PE from growing beyond a certain size. I think there is per state like size or revenue requirements for you as a PE that once you hit that, that's it, you cannot grow past that. So typically you're going to have to go start another one, and you cannot do it with the same. Because, like, listen, this also will introduce like real risks, right? Let's look at the flip side. imagine, I mean, let's see how that played in the financial industry with the, if you remember, Bank of America and Merrill Lynch and, you know, like the financial crisis, right?
Yeah.
If a financial crisis hits, you don't want this to take half your healthcare system down with it. So you want, like, with the monopoly, it's monopoly, right? So with the monopoly comes a price monopoly to the consumer, but also comes the risk of blow-ups. And if let's say PE is kind of large enough to blow up, it might blow up half the healthcare system with it, and that's what you would not want.
All right. Okay, Suku, do you have anything else you want to add to this podcast?
No, I think this is awesome, man.
Okay. Cheers.
Thank you, man. Cheers, Benny. Bye-bye.